Then the UEFA Champions League was the most.
Yep.
It was the most predictable game of soccer to ever exist. It just was exactly what anyone thought it was.
Yep.
That's exactly what it was. 2-0. Real Madrid takes care of Dortmund.
I mean, was anybody expecting anything differently? Like, this is a very strong Real Madrid team, and this is a Dortmund team that was like third in the Bundesliga, or even maybe
No,
lower than
probably
that.
lower actually. I'd have to check, but yeah, they did not have
Yeah,
a great Bundesliga campaign. Now, they're always a squad that's going to get better next year, and you know what I mean,
yeah.
but still like
Unless Bayern buys their players.
yeah, it's already begun. Bayern's getting that Ta guy from Leverkusen. But so Madrid wins, what is this, the 14th Champions League title?
Yeah,
Like, this is crazy. Like,
and you know what? I thought about this when I was watching this game. Like, how can you differentiate between like the real Real Madrid fans, no pun intended, or like the ones that jump on the bandwagon, like
how do
you
you
know the
know,
ones that
like,
see all.
once you become a global brand, does that even necessarily matter? Like, it really, it's hard for me. That's why I like MLS. That's why we do a fire-centric podcast. I live in Chicago. Like, I care about Chicago. I really have never been able to get myself too worked up about Leeds or whatever, you know what I mean? Or Manchester United or whatever.
It always cracks me up when I see those individuals that wake up at the crack of dawn at 6 in the morning to go to a local pub and watch like a Premier League game. Like, dude, I'd rather be sleeping and be on my fourth stream than waking up early. It's like, it feels like I'm going to work, you know, waking
Yeah,
up that early.
I mean, I do try to watch the big matchups where like the Champions League I usually catch, but this year I knew it was going to be dumb and I was going to the fire game, blah 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 blah, right? But I did actually. I lied. I watched 15 minutes of it. I turned it on and I was like, "Yep, this is exactly what I thought it was gonna be." You know, but
Oh man,
you know, it. Like I said, it's hard to muster a lot of care. It happened exactly
it's
like how it happened.
it does, and you know, honestly, it's. I think if a team's becoming like a global brand, it's harder and harder to find those fans that have been there since day one. We might get to see that with what's that team again? The
Oh,
one in
Wrexham.
Wales. Yeah, Wrexham. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. You know,
we
everybody's favorite team.
actively they just celebrated a man's 100th birthday. He was talking about a game from 1928. Like,
Exactly.
bro has been day one.
And the thing about it is that you see this now. You see all these individuals from the neighborhood. What happens if Wrexham actually, you know, gets to the Premier League and becomes a global brand? Do you think those individuals are still going to be in that in that process? I mean, I'm sure they're still going to be following the team, but and that's kind of when I was getting to it last time, where you know you kind of lose a little bit of identity once you make it to a global stage. You
Well,
know,
okay, but it just morphs, right? Like, can you ever really
yeah,
say, like, Real Madrid? Like, there are some people who just care about what's cool and love Real Madrid, or they played it on FIFA and, you know, they grew up in Indonesia or America or Canada or wherever, and they played the team on FIFA because they were really good and they needed to beat their older
yeah.
brother. And then they fell in love with, you know, these players, and then they love them from afar. That's a real thing, right? Like, it's fine to be a fan of whoever you're a fan of. It's just soccer's so weird with this kind of like barrier to
It,
entry about fandom,
it,
like how hardcore you
yeah.
are. Because, like, you know, I guess that stems from when the fans were like gangs, right? Like firms,
Yeah,
you
when
know,
they're
like
roving gangs. Yeah.
roving
So
gangs, you know, yeah.
it's funny you mentioned about the video game stuff because, uh, you know, and this is back 20 years ago, maybe even before that, like in the late 90s. I actually started kind of paying attention to some of these European teams from playing FIFA. Um, and you know, back then it was so hard to watch a Premier League game. It was so hard to watch a Serie A game or even a Liga game. I think back then you had to like order it on pay per view.
Oh, or
You
like, I
know,
guess that's why there's so many Manchester United fans, because the PBS would show games. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
So
it's kind of like with the
I mean,
Cubs. Like, oh, everybody had
yeah,
WGN. Why not be a Cubs fan, right?
WGN, yeah. The thing is, when I was younger, I actually used to be a big Manchester United fan. And I kind of,
what turned
I
you
guess you could
off? Was
say,
that Trader Van Persie
no,
coming over? No.
no. So, and it was more or less just kind of it was just a combination of things, but I really, really, was into Manchester United because I played a copy of um, Football Manager 2, and I think and that version of that game still had Eric Cantona playing for Man U, and so I was so good with that team. Like that team was unbeatable. Like I used to love playing as them. And then I ended up getting the later version, which was like the 97, 98 season. And that one had David Beckham. It had all
Oh, it had that
the
class of
class of 90.
'92. Yep, yep.
Yeah. And that team was awesome. So that kind of got me into it. Um, and that was how I kind of, really found like my following for a club.
Well, see,
But
that makes
now
sense,
it's,
but some people didn't
yeah.
move on to their local team.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's an epiphany. I think one day it's like I kind of realized because I used to follow. I try to watch as much European soccer as I could, but one day I kind of like, man, it's like I would really like to see these teams live, but I have to go to Europe for that. Going to Europe is expensive,
Still
and if
is.
I want to watch, it still
Confirmed,
is.
still is.
It still is. And if I want to watch them regularly, that's going to be very expensive. I got to either be a billionaire or, or know someone. But and that's kind of what kind of turned me on to like MLS and the Chicago Fire. I was like, that's my local team. They represent the city I grew up in. Why wouldn't I support them?
It makes sense to me. All right, so there's one more thing before we move on to our local Champions League I want to touch on. I mean, Vini Jr. is kind of becoming the truth, right? Like he's gonna be that other guy. Like you had Ronaldo and Messi, but then there was still Rooney doing his thing, right? Like I feel like Vinny's kind of like that. He's gonna be a great.
He's the background guy.
He's never gonna be the GOAT, but he's gonna be goated, right? That type of thing. And it's wild.
Would you say like a Zlatan type player?
You know what? There's not many Zlatans. It's like
that guy's
it's
unique.
like you can kind of compare like Charles Oakley to Dennis Rodman, but there is no Dennis Rodman. You feel me? That's like
no Dennis Rodman.
Yeah,
It's
so
like,
more like a Ryan or a David Beckham, more like a David Beckham or a.
I would even say David Beckham because David Beckham had his own universe.
Okay, you're right.
I would
That's
say
fair.
like a Ryan Giggs. I would say like a Ryan Giggs.
Yeah, or
he's really great.
I feel you.
But yeah,
but it's funny to me how much hate that he got a couple years ago. It's like the kid was 19. They're like, what a flop. He's awful. It's like, dog. Now look at him. He's walking on water, man. But anyway, speaking of water, don't drink the water.